Snipers, you have to see what's happening to the Bitcoin price this Tuesday. As we talked about Bitcoin holding 41,950 yesterday being the bullish confirmation that we could potentially see some further upside. Now we have a bullish continuation candle, and this is extremely important because notice this fractal that initially formed from when we first topped out at 64,000, where we saw similar price action. And there's a very specific area here where Bitcoin had four red daily candles before breaking out to the upside. And right now you can see we have had four red daily candles, and so far we've only seen green since then. The question is, as we've been talking about, similar to what lumber did when it first crossed back towards its 50-day moving average, are we seeing a bullish flag here that's going to break Bitcoin out towards the $49,700 to $52,000 level? And if that's the case, the importance of this, as we've been talking about here in the Snipers channel, is the fact that we invalidate this macro head and shoulder pattern, which is an extremely bearish pattern. And if we've been expecting further downside for Bitcoin, if we invalidate this neckline, because with every head and shoulder pattern, at some point or another, you come up to test the neckline, and that's going to be the final confirmation of whether or not there's going to be more bearish momentum, or if it's going to invalidate the bearish pattern, get above this neckline, which right now 44,800, 45,000, we can consider that pretty much the neckline, and we get above it, we invalidate the bearish pattern, and then potentially Bitcoin is set up to see new all-time highs and continue price discovery and break back above 69,000 US dollars. Is this the case? We're going to talk about the micro time frames to see how price action is reacting to this move. Remember to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm if you support this content, and subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/snipers. First and foremost, the 6-hour chart, I really like what I'm seeing here. So the reason I wanted to be on my chart today, not on my phone, is because I wanted to address the 6-hour volume. Look at what we're seeing right now. We have already seen 1, 2, 3 spikes of institutional buy pressure since we've come below 34,788. Why is that important? Well, I've been saying this since Bitcoin topped out at 69,000 that we're waiting for 6-hour confirmation, 6-hour volume that equates to the amount of sell pressure that we've recently seen, because we haven't seen that since Bitcoin came below 34,788. So now that we're finally starting to see that, and guess what? If we go on the daily chart, it's quite clear that ever since we came down to 33,000, look at how much more buyers have come into the market, not just institutions, but even retail buy volume. And so that's a very positive thing, because that's exactly how Bitcoin initially bottomed out with this fractal that we were following. And when we first came down to this extremely important support below 34,708, we saw our first spur of institutional volume. That's when we started saying that Bitcoin possibly has bottomed out here. And this was in May of 2021 when we formed that initial fractal that did lead to new all-time highs. And then we saw continued institutional buy volume come in the range. The path of least resistance when there's light volume is always going to be sideways to a little bit higher, not lower. And a lot of that has to do with inflation. It has to do with a lot of other factors. But I've been preaching this a lot here in the Snipers channel, and we talked about this a lot from the initial drop. We haven't talked much about it now, but the path of least resistance when there's light volume is always sideways to a little bit higher. So yes, we're not seeing the type of volume maybe that if we go on this weekly chart that we saw, when Bitcoin in May of 2021 was starting this massive uptrend. We had a lot of volume here. We had a lot of volume. Yes, we're seeing a lot less volume, but that doesn't mean price has to come down. Volume is just an indicator of how much participants are in the market, but it doesn't have a direct correlation to price, especially with an asset like Bitcoin that has a limited amount of supply and an increasing amount of demand with not just institutions, but also with retail. And so what we want to monitor into the smaller time frames, we'll talk about in just a second. But what I do want to address is, do you guys remember this gravestone doji bearish candle that we talked about yesterday? I told you if this was during an uptrend, it would be bearish, but because it's during a downtrend, it could be bullish. We're seeing some bullish price action with this new weekly candle. If we breach this candle high at 45,821, it will completely invalidate the gravestone doji that we saw. And so that's also a major level that we want to conquer, this candle high 45,821. But when we go into the micro time frames, I'm going to talk about what I'm expecting right now, because this is the truth of the matter. We know the most important level right now is 44,800. And so if we're starting to move towards 44,800, and this would be the third time that we'd be moving up towards 44,800, if we start to see hourly and 4-hour confirmations above 44,800, that's the third time we're knocking on this door. The third time typically is the charm, and that will most likely be the confirmation that Bitcoin is going to invalidate the bearish head and shoulder pattern, get to 49,700, and then from there we want to talk about how price action looks, how volume is looking. But the confirmation right now is 44,800. Until we break above 44,800, we have to realize the range that we're playing in is still 44,800 as a major resistance and 41,950 as our major support. And we also have this previous weekly open at 42,380, which I talked about yesterday. If we were to see hourly and 4-hour confirmations above this level, and let's see how well that worked out. Guess what? Here on the Sniper Channel, we have the most accurate technical analysis. As soon as we saw 2 hourly candles move above that previous weekly open, we saw bullish continuation, and now we're even seeing further upside. And so that's why those hourly and 4-hour confirmations are extremely important. So very interesting to see this 4-hour Ichimoku cloud. We want to address this here. Notice how we came to test the Ichimoku cloud. We got above it, and then we came inside to test it, and we did go back inside of it. Now we're starting to get back above it. That shows a lot of strength and momentum. It's not a coincidence that's sitting right here around 44,800 as well. So at $44,800 level is where I think we'll start to see real momentum come in for Bitcoin. And then the weekly open is also right at 41,950. So that really emphasizes how important this support level is. We don't want to see any candles back around 41,950. If we get hourly and 4-hour confirmations below this level, then that brings that bearish scenario to the table where we could come down to 38,000. And I know we've talked about 40,000 as a potential level that Bitcoin can come to and still be inside of an inverse head and shoulder. If we break 40,000, the likelihood that we actually break below 33,000 becomes highly likely to come to 25,000. So we know 40,000 is also very important, but now that we've seen the bullishness already at 41,950, what I will say is I preferably don't want to see Bitcoin back below 41,950. So one thing I love to do here on the Snipers channel is I like to give you guys the earliest confirmations of what the next move is going to be by giving you exact prices. And so I know our exact price recently has been 40,000 as the max downside that we could see to assume a bullish scenario is still on the table, but I'm going to change that now and say that 41,950 is now the max downside that I'd like to see in order to assume that we're not going to see a potential break towards 26,000 US dollars. And so that's a very early confirmation. But the reason I'm saying this is because we're already seeing price action. And if we looked at that fractal from the past, if we continue to follow that, we shouldn't see any further downside below this extremely important support at 41,950. So I don't want to see price action get back below this level. And so far, I'll tell you what, the revolving parts of the market, and before I get into the revolving parts, we're going to go into the total and then Ethereum and then talk about traditional markets. Remember what I talked about with lumber. When we initially saw the death cross with lumber, if we were to calculate time period, from that death cross to the bottom for lumber was around 15 days. For Bitcoin, it was around 11 days. So we can say 10 to 15 days after the death cross, we saw a bottom for lumber. And then I'm going to talk about what lumber did. But what lumber did was it came towards this 50-day moving average after that bottom, and it had a cup of coffee, didn't go too far away from it before seeing a very strong continuation of the upside. I'll show you how strong that continuation was, because that's exactly what could potentially be happening here to Bitcoin. The reason I want to use lumber is because it was also an asset that saw a lot of exuberance through 2020 and 2021. And so it was nice to see what happened here is we had a death cross, just like Bitcoin. We bottomed out about 15 days from that death cross. We came to this 50-day moving average. This is where I want you to pay attention to for lumber, because this is kind of where Bitcoin is at until we saw further upside. We saw a massive break to the upside. We never came below these lows. We stayed above these lows to the point where we actually saw even more strength above not just the 50-day, but now the 200 and 100-day.
And then you can see that brought lumber back above $1,000 US, sitting at $1,200 with a bottom recently of around $400 US. So the question is, are we in this exact point of time right now for Bitcoin where lumber was? That could certainly be the case, because lumber has certainly, we could say, recovered a lot of the losses it's seen ever since the strong downtrend. So that's why I wanted to look at that chart. And then we're having some strong confirmations with other outside revolving parts, like the total market cap on the 6-hour chart. You can see we are fully currently above the previous weekly open. This was an early confirmation that we could have had to see whether or not Bitcoin was going to be ready to move up. And we are above 1.915 trillion. We want to stay above 1.915 trillion. We can consider this kind of like the $44,800 level. The total market cap has already moved above that level. And I know with altcoins, a lot of people are thinking that there's going to be a shift away from altcoins back into Bitcoin, or dominance is going to start falling for altcoins. So far, we haven't seen a decisive break of this major support, but we want to monitor the altcoins outside of Ethereum. It's testing a major support level. We have yet to see a break of it. And I will say this, if we look at on-chain metrics, I will pull this up. We have seen a lot of Ethereum come onto exchanges. And so I just want you guys to realize that there's two ways this could play out, because of the fact that we saw $452 million in Ethereum come on exchanges today, but we only saw 100 million of Bitcoin leave exchanges, and we saw 230 million of USDT leaving exchanges. So a lot of Ethereum has come on exchanges. What are people going to do with Ethereum? Well, they could either sell it, right? Or they could buy altcoins with it. And so what we want to monitor is this Ethereum to Bitcoin chart, because the question is, are we going to be seeing that Ethereum move into Bitcoin? Are we going to be seeing it move into altcoins? I think the confirmation of that is going to be whether or not there's strength or weakness with this Ethereum Bitcoin chart, where if we break above 75,000 Satoshis, that's confirmation that we're actually breaking back above this triangle formation. And that would show strength that maybe altcoins are going to be seeing the benefits of that Ethereum moving onto exchanges. Whereas if we break back below 65,000 Satoshis, this is the major support, that could assume that that money is probably going to move into Bitcoin for the most part, or be sold off. And so that's something to monitor with Ethereum. Now, notice how same with the total market cap, we are above the previous weekly open, which is very positive. And that's sitting at 30.55, where price is currently at 30.90. We want to hold 30.55 to assume further momentum for this upside move, with our initial target right now of 34.54. We break above 34.54. That's almost like Bitcoin breaking back above 49,700. That would really strengthen the thesis that Ethereum can move into new all-time highs. But if we do come down below 30.55, what we want to monitor first is this weekly open at 28.74. And of course, if we come towards this level, the monthly open is going to be our last draw around 2,700. And then, I would say the weekly open for Ethereum right around that $2,800 level is similar to the $41,950 level for Bitcoin. So we don't want to see Ethereum get below 2,900. Staying above 30.55 is very positive. As long as we're above 30.55, we could assume the next target is 34.54. As long as we see continuation for Bitcoin as well, you can see we also sort of have this inverse head and shoulder pattern forming here for Ethereum. It almost looks a lot nicer, just to be frank with you, because of the way this left shoulder is very confluent with this right shoulder. And so this looks very good. This could be a move to the upside and a confirmation. Another potential confirmation of this would just be taking this neckline here of the inverse head and shoulder. And so that would be right around the 3250 level, let's say 3,300. We start getting above that, that's a very strong confirmation for the overall market that we're going to see a lot of continuation. Because if we were to just take the target of this inverse head and shoulder pattern, if we break above, let's say, the $3,300 level, just to put it on the books, that could potentially take Ethereum back towards its previous all-time highs at 4370. And that would be very, very bullish. So this is a very nice pattern that we could potentially see play out as long as Bitcoin continues to follow that fractal. And I think that that's the main topic of today. It's the fact that Bitcoin is following a move that it's done in the past. The volume in the 6-hour looks very similar to how the volume looked back then. If we were to pull up the VPVR, for example, and just factor in the price action since Bitcoin broke above its previous all-time high from 2017, you can see right now we are in this zone where there's a lot less volume between 38,000 and let's say the $47,000 level. So we have this pretty empty space here of no volume. What would also be nice is, I would say, for the bears, because we always address the bears and the bulls on this channel. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm if you guys like the fact that we address the bears and the bulls, to give you guys a neutral perspective. So we know with the MACD crossover recently, right? If we were to pull up the moving average convergence divergence on the monthly chart, we have seen a bearish crossover, right? Coming down. And we talked about this on one of our live streams, but I wouldn't mind talking about it again. We actually have to pull up Bitcoin chart from Bitstamp because there's just not enough price action on the Binance chart to show you guys this. But when we saw in 2017 that MACD crossover on the monthly chart, which is a pretty strong indicator, as you guys can see here, what happened to Bitcoin in June of 2018 when that happened? Well, in June 2018, what ended up happening in Bitcoin is, as you guys can see here, June of 2018, we had our candle high for the month at 77.90, our candle low at 57.74. The next month candle high, 8,500, candle low, 6,000. And so you can see it really moved sideways for the next 2 to 3, let's say 4 or 5 months. Because the next month, 7,700 candle high, low of 5,800. Next month, 7,500 candle high to a low of 6,000. Next month, the high of 67.56 to 60.55. And so this sideways price action is something that we've been preparing for actually in our Discord. And the way that we've been preparing for it is, if we are entering, let's say, a quote unquote bearish market, or let's just say we go sideways like what happened when we initially saw that MACD crossover. Well, the way that you play the market in order to continue to make money when there's not a strong uptrend is you take advantage of the first test of important support levels, and that sideways volatility is where, like for those in our Discord group, link is in the description below, we took a swing trade here around the $35,000 level for Bitcoin, to where now we're above 30% profits. And so we can actually take some profits off the table and still see price action come back down. Let's say we reject 44,800. Let's say we get to 49,700. We can take some more profits off the table here. And even if we come down, we're fine, because let's say we take out our initial capital when we hit 49,700. Now we have all of this profit that we made, let's say 40, 50% profits on our trade, that we can put to the side and then wait for the next drop and then buy again at lower levels, and then just continuously take advantage of the sideways price action. So even if we see sideways price action for a couple months, we can still make money by ensuring that we are buying the dips and we are selling the highs, right? So, really, if we want to assume that Bitcoin is going to continue to price discovery, that's going to come when we get towards the midpoint of this channel, right around 52,000. If we break above 52,000, at that point, we won't want to sell any more positions. We want to stay in our positions. So those, the dollar cost averaging strategies are effective, because if we break above 52,000, that's the major confirmation of a macro shift that will potentially go into new all-time highs. And for those that have been tuning the Snipers channel, we even predicted that when we initially broke around 49,700 from this initial, drop that we saw from 64,000, I said as soon as 49,700 started showing strength and we broke above it here, that this downtrend was going to lead to new all-time highs, and that actually ended up being the case. And so we were able to predict this higher high. And for those that have been tuning the Snipers channel, we predicted that higher high. Because I talked about that potential scenario where Bitcoin just goes just above the previous all-time high to form the higher high before seeing another drop down. So very nice to see what we're doing right now with the Bitcoin price. I'm going to address traditional markets in just a second, and then we'll wrap up with a quick summary of Bitcoin. I do want to talk about the DXY right now, what I'm looking for, what you should be looking for. And right now we're back above the 50-day moving average. We held the 100-day moving average. That's not a good puzzle piece, I would say, in the medium term. If we want to assume further bullishness for Bitcoin, if the DXY breaks below 95.885, that would be a very positive thing for Bitcoin. And I think that's still on the table. It's highly likely because we are testing a multi-year resistance level that actually dates back, I would say even over 5 years for sure, all the way back towards 2011. this resistance level could certainly be the place that the DXY ends up rejecting. And so if we see this type of movement for the DXY, let's say we break below 95.885 again, that would be very positive for Bitcoin. So that's what I want to monitor. And the opposite is also true, that if we break above this level, right around 97.62 right now, but that could change because it's an ascending resistance level, that could be negative for Bitcoin. So that's what I'm monitoring now. I would say that the DXY is so far calm, as I said yesterday, which is why it's allowing assets like Bitcoin to move to the upside, and even the S&P 500 trying to form a higher low here on turnaround Tuesday. And if we can see some decisiveness above this 200-day moving average, which we've yet to do, then that would be a very strong confirmation for Bitcoin to potentially see continued upside as well. And that would potentially bottom out the S&P 500 here for the immediate short term and medium term. So we're definitely watching that. China doing very well, up 1% today. Euro 100 up 1%. So we've yet to break any recent lows. We're just seeing a lot of higher lows form. And what we're seeing with Coinbase, and I want to talk about the 4-dimensional revolving parts, is it's holding this major support level, which was previous resistance. This was kind of like that channel that Bitcoin was in, and that's a very positive thing. And we're also seeing some positive things with like Airbnb forming new highs from this recent consolidation. So we're seeing a lot of strength with tech, I would say. Very specific tech stocks are doing very well. And then ARK, for example, just moving sideways. So I guess the real question here is this a potential bearish flag from a downside move to continue further down, or is this going to be a great place to be entering positions because it's the 200-week moving average, which we all know is an extreme discount for any great asset, especially ARK Innovation ETF. So if we see a reversal here, that's certainly on the table that we want to monitor. And with that being said, there's not much happening with fundamentals. This was a very technical day for Bitcoin. And to wrap up, what I will say is that so far we could potentially have had found a short-term to a medium-term bottom here at 33,000 US dollars, exactly as we've been predicting here on the Snipers channel. You can see we even dodged this 100-week moving average, which is a bullish sign. And so with that happening right now, this confirmation that we're waiting for is going to be above 44,800. If we can move above 44,800, that really strengthens the thesis that we're following the fractal that we saw in 2021, where Bitcoin did form new all-time highs. That would also validate the fact that the 50-day wants to hold, similar to what lumber did, and that we want to start getting towards the 200 and 100-day moving average again. And so once we get above 44,800 with decisiveness, we can start talking about how we'd like 49,700 to react. And then, of course, getting above 49,700 is a very positive thing. But even just 44,800 right now is important because of that bearish neckline that I talked about. So that's the biggest thing right now. We invalidated that bearish neckline. That's a very good thing. And then to wrap up, 44,800, 41,950 is the range that we're in. We break below 41,950, 38,000 is on the table. We break above 44,800, 49,700 is on the table, and we invalidate that bearish macro pattern. And then maybe Bitcoin won't see price action back below 30,000 ever again. And that would be a very positive thing for the Bitcoin bulls. With that, thank you all for tuning into the Snipers channel today. I appreciate each and every one of you tuned into the channel. Remember to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, turn on the post notifications, hit the bell, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/snipers, and I'll see you guys next time. Snipers out.